Good morning, everyone. I'm pitch hitting for our vice president, who's a few minutes late. I want to welcome us all back to the second day of the Board of Governors retreat, and everyone who is joining us either through Zoom or through or who are here in person. I want to welcome you all. And look who's here. I defer to our vice president now. I've gavelled in. Oh, well, I've gavelled in.
Thank you for hanging in there. It's one of those rare situations where, not so rare situations where coming to LA is actually a longer commute than going up to Sacramento. So welcome back, everybody, for day 2 of our deep dive. Before we go ahead and get started, let's do roll just to establish quorum. Christina?
Hildegard B. Aguinaldo.
Present.
Adrian C. Brown. Casey Chang.
Present.
Amy Costa. Tom Epstein.
Here.
Felicia Escobar Carrillo.
Present.
Nan Gomez Heitzberg. Pamela Haynes.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. Harry Legrand.
Here.
Paul Medina.
Here.
Jennifer Perry.
Here.
Bill Rawlings. Mary Salas. Blas Villalobos. Syrian Villavicencio.
Here.
Joseph Williams.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Thank you very much, Christina. And now I will turn it over to our chancellor, Dr. Christian.
Well, good morning, everyone. 2 quick things, and then I'll introduce our speaker today. First, wanted to really thank the Santa Monica crew, particularly shout out to Rob. It's pretty amazing how we kept having requests and you were able to find solutions. And the one that I loved the most was when Craig Hayward requested an easel. We had the moving transparent walls. And so we knew we were in the Performing Arts Center here at Santa Monica College. Dinner was amazing. President Jeffrey really put out a treat for all of the board members. Really enjoyed the comments by Vice President of Academic Affairs, Jason, as well as our person responsible for government relations, Dawn. So it's been truly a delight being here at Santa Monica. Craig Hayward has prepared a survey for board members, a reflection survey rather than calling it an evaluation survey, a reflection survey. So Andrea or Christina will get it into your inbox. So our hope is during the break, you take a moment to complete the survey so we have your thoughts on our day and a half together. And with that, it's really delightful to have Ben Sheeta here. Our vice president of the board, Aguinaldo, really did a very nice job describing Ben. Ben is a very hard worker and a visionary and is spearheading the governor's work on the career education master plan for the state of California. It truly reflects where California is now and creating a framework that would carry California way into the future. I would share what my colleagues at the UCs and CSU, Michael Drake and Millie Garcia and myself, we feel fortunate to have a partner in this endeavor of higher education here in California because we get to work with Ben Sheeta. So at this point, Ben, really happy you took the time from your busy schedule to come here and be with the Board of Governors. So I'll turn it over to you.
So for the past couple of months, I've been going around the state asking a simple question. I'm not going to ask you all because I know the answer, but I've been asking everybody else, which is raise your hand if you got into this work, into this service to embed, to entrench, to defend, to reinforce, and to reify the status quo. And surprisingly, no one ever raises their hand. Usually there's like 1 or 2 people who are a little mischievous who raise their hand. But for the most part, no one ever raises their hand. And so that raises the big riddle to me. If none of us got into this work to defend and entrench the status quo, then why is it so fucking entrenched? And so I want to tell you a story about a group of people who were born in the 1800s, whose names were Cornelius, Clark Kerr, Wilbur, and Mabel. The names reflect how dated the architects of our former master plan were. And they were the ones born in the 1800s who came together in the 1950s and finalizing up at 1960, the master plan for higher education. That was the last big time that California truly thought strategically, holistically big about education. I want you to think about how long ago that was, 64 years ago. A document written by people from the 1800s named Cornelius and Wilbur. And the operative question in their mind was, what do we do with the 18-year-old Californian? That was their operative question. And what their answer was 3 conveyor belts, one to the community colleges, one to the CSUs, and one to the UCs. That's more or less what they were doing. To give you a sense of how long ago 64 years was again, consider who was 18 in 1960. President Biden was 18 in 1960. So what we're working with is a document drafted by people born in the 1800s for a young 18-year-old Joe Biden. And that's what we've been building on, but we've never really looked at it ever since. It's been 64 years. And so that is the big question. That's the big puzzle in my mind about why is the status quo so embedded? It can't be that it's because what we're working with now is perfect, because actually I talk to everybody and no one feels set up for success in our systems. The students and families don't feel set up for success. The public servants who operate in actually on the ground don't feel set up for success. None of us feel set up for success. What's wild is I know that everybody here at some point imagined that, oh boy, there must be like a room where all the levers and all the power is, and I just need to get to that room. You're actually in that room now, and it turns out, where the heck is the levers? None of us know. It turns out it's us. So I want to pause there and tell you why it's so critical that we move now. There are 3 things that keep me up at night. The first thing is the young person, and we know the youth mental health crisis that we're facing, but I want to give more texture to it, and I want to provide that texture through the lens of your work. So you all know my story. I was a 14-year-old, I dropped out of high school, I spent a whole year, 365 days thinking about killing myself. And you have to ask yourself, what would drive a 14-year-old to think about killing themselves? And the thoughts in my mind were, there's only one path to success in America and California. And we're continuing to tell all young people this. There's one path to success. You excel in high school, you perfect that transcript, you pick up all the A through Gs and APs, all blah, blah. And then you get to a selective 4-year university. And then you go into a small handful of professions and places. You can go into law, medicine, you can go to tech, finance, but there's a very narrow set of what constitutes success and value and worth in America and in California. And so as a 14-year-old in my mind, I was like, well, I dropped out of high school. I guess it's over for me. I might as well give it up. 18 is where we are anchoring all of our young people on right now. But 18 is a number that was picked out of a hat by some lawyers in 1880. Truly, the age of majority. Some lawyers just picked it out of a hat. It means nothing. The actual markers that reflect the physiological facts of our bodies is our development basically really accelerates during this period from 13 to 25. That's puberty through to roughly the period where our prefrontal cortex stops developing. That period moves around a lot. And we all experience that. That's commonsensical too, right? We all went through that. Until you're like your late 20s, like, yeah, everything feels like a moving target, because it is. Everything in your brains, everything in our thoughts, every insight that we have, everything that we think is our identity is actually a moving target until well past 25-ish, but oftentimes beyond that. And so what we're doing, though, is we're creating this conveyor belt for young people that feels like they're already falling behind. Every young person already feels like they're falling behind, and it's bizarre. Even though our lived reality for all of us is that actually there's no such thing as falling behind, especially before 25. And so the first thing that keeps me up at night is the millions of young people who are like me, who are being torn up, who are being ground up by the machinery of our systems. It's not anybody doing it on purpose. It just is the way our systems are running. The machinery is tearing them up and their egos up and their identities up and their notions of self-worth up. And what that's leading to is disillusionment, anxiety, depression, suicide. People are literally dying every day because we are failing to create a more humane system for young people that reflects lived reality. So that's the first thing that keeps me up at night. Every day somebody dies because of it. The second thing that keeps me up at night is the 45-year-old quote unquote displaced worker. Right now, if this is a very common fact pattern. 45-year-old loses their job, comes to me and says, Ben, I'm the breadwinner for my family. I'm the sole provider. Paycheck to paycheck, though. 3 kiddos. Just got laid off. I'm terrified. What do I do? The first thing I would tell them is, thank you for your heroic and human act, which is to say, just consider the lived reality of that person, which is you are under that much pressure and anxiety, and you still got yourself up out of bed that morning, and you still gathered the strength to ask for help. But when that 45-year-old laid off worker comes to me and asks me for help, guess where I'm going to point them to? A lot of the same places you'll point them to. Adult school, ROP, community college, workforce development board program, employment training panel program, American Job Center, apprenticeships, proprietary call, whatever it is, everything and nothing. There's 1,000 doors right now for adult learners, but we never built a system for adult learners. We just have little bits and bobs. And so that's what we're about to run all of these people through. And think about what we're doing to that heroic human act of picking themselves out of bed that morning. If we send them to the wrong door, what a disservice we done as a human to that other human. And that's what I'm afraid of right now. And that's accelerating. That's basically going to become the norm. The master plan for higher education was designed in a time when the goal was to get somebody an engineering degree over at Cal State Long Beach, get them into Boeing, get them there for 50 years, get them their gold watch, and they're done. The notion of dislocation is going to be the norm. It's not going to be a traumatic one-time event that occurs in a small slice of our lives. It's going to happen to all of us all the time. And that's actually going to be the beauty of it. The navigation, the opportunity to try different parts of our careers. So the second thing that keeps me up at night is we have no great answer for that 45-year-old laid off worker. And they're coming at us at scale. And you all know that better than anybody. The third thing that keeps me up at night is no one is coming to save us. Again, I got into this work expecting I would find the room eventually. And I suspect that you all did too. But again, you keep moving up and up in different rooms and everybody's, put their hands up, pointing the finger at everybody else. Nobody's really having the hard conversations, the big conversations that are necessary. We're still in our parochial silos and picking up our turf wars. And whenever I'm in Sacramento, everything's defined as a dichotomy. Everything's a turf war. It's one or the other. It's this or that. CTIG or strong workforce. It's community college BAs or not BAs. Everything's binary. Everything's a dichotomy. Everything's about turf. We have to get bigger. We have to think bigger. We have to think more earnestly. We have to think more courageously. And so I want to wrap with saying, and I want to open up for questions and some discussion, but I want to wrap with saying, you've all known me for a while, and I've been, in this for, since basically 24 hours after the governor was elected. And I'm burnt out. And the reason why I'm here, though, and the reason why I'm going to stick it out for the remaining 33 months, as of tomorrow, 32 months remaining in the Newsom administration, is this is our final window to fix this. I truly feel that it scares the crap out of me. Having been with the governor since the get-go, I could tell you that it takes you a couple of years to do something this big, to convene a conversation this big. I'm not even sure that there's been a time since Clark Kerr that we've been able to convene a conversation this big because we haven't had partners who are willing to have it. I'm telling you that if we can't do it in this 33-month window where we have strong partnerships, we have, sure, but down budget year, but we have things that are seeded, and it's always going to be up and down budget years. We have great partners. We have this great need. We have a governor who desperately wants to do this. If Governor Newsom and we cannot do this in the next 33 months, I am not sure it's possible. And so with that, I'm counting on you all and I'm asking you all, not for anything in particular, because I actually don't even know what to ask you for yet. It's more about your human partnership. We're working on different concepts and policies and whatever. It's not about different concepts and policies and whatever. My take is there are 100 different ways to improve on the status quo. The problem is that we're failing to pick one. The status quo is intolerable. I don't care, or I do care, but I am willing to compromise and agree on any one of the 100. I just need to insist, and we all need to insist in one clarion coherent, courageous voice that we cannot stand the status quo and that we have to upend it in the next 33 months. So I want to open it up for conversation. But I also, I could share more about what we're trying to do and whatnot, but I want to just pause there and just say, like, that is what's at stake for us in terms of what we're trying to do with the master plan for career education. Is it doesn't necessarily mean one thing or another. It stands for the proposition that there's a much bigger conversation that we have to have that encompasses especially high school, community college, CSUs, UCs, private independents, proprietaries, workforce development board programs, and this business programs and employers. Like, there's this big thing that we have to pull together, and it's hard to wrap our arms around it. But what I'm asking for is our shared humanity and our shared courage and our shared love and joy. So I'll open up for questions.
Hi, Ben. You talk about kind of blowing up the status quo. What specifically do you think are the most important ways we need to change the status quo?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the conveyor belt concept, right? So it's like, I mean, you could literally think about it this way. It makes so much sense if you think about it as human beings. These aren't like abstract rules. These aren't laws of physics. They're just human beings. So think to yourself, Cornelius was born in the 1800s, and he is seeing the wave of industrial modernization with Model T and Ford, and he is imagining conveyor belts. Literally, the people who designed the master plan for higher education came from a very industrial nuclear age mindset where their idea was we could take all the humans in America and California and put them right under the exact right conveyor belt and optimize this system. That's basically what they had in mind. And I want to pause there and say, I'm so grateful that they did that, honestly, right? It's like there's a part of me that's kind of saying there's a implicit critique I'm making about sort of like the way that people did things. But I want to say they left us something beautiful, and they left us something that saved my life, having gone to the Orange Coast College and Golden Weston Coastline. Like they left something beautiful. We just haven't been fixing it up. Like we have dropped the ball on our end. We haven't been good stewards of what we've inherited. And so what they've left us is conveyor belts. And what's bizarre to me is I got in the conveyor belt from Dropout, and I wanted to kill myself because I thought that conveyor belt ended nowhere. And then I got in the conveyor. I got to Harvard Law School, and I met all the kids who were on the conveyor belt to Harvard Law School. And guess what? They were all miserable too. They were all anxious and depressed. That's the big secret. They should be the winners. They should be like, yeah, I won the meritocracy. I own America. But no, they're like depressed and anxious and status hungry, and they're always comparing themselves to others. And by now, I'm like more than 10 years out of law school. And actually, most of them hate being lawyers. They're like, why did I do this? And they were on the conveyor belt that went from Phillips Exeter Academy to Harvard College. And if you get good grades at Harvard College, you have to go to Harvard Law School. And if you get good grades at Harvard Law School, you got to go to a big law, get a good clerkship. And then if you get a clerkship, you got to go to a big law firm. Like they were on that conveyor belt too. So Tom, that's a long way of saying, I think what we truly need to change is the conveyor belts altogether, and then recenter actually on the human. And so I want to offer a way of thinking about this that's completely different than I think the ways that we previously talked about K-12, higher ed, segments, blah, 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 blah. Because that's part of the problem, where we're reinforcing the language of silos. So I want to offer anchoring on the human journey that actually all humans more or less fall into. Actually, given the variation and diversity of us, it's remarkable that actually all of us more or less fall into 3 stages of life. at least from the career ed, sort of like our perspective as public systems. Stage 1 is pre-puberty, 0 to 12, more or less. During that period, everybody needs to get the sort of bottom parts of Maslow's fully shored up for them. They have to get wrapped around. They have to be fed, they have to be safe, they have to be well, they have to have ready and full access to everything in terms of the whole child. But we don't need to yet be obsessing about test scores because come on, they're 8. Like, just let them grow as human beings. Close the opportunity gaps before they become achievement gaps. So for us, this is a little bit less your world, but this is why we're doing things like universal TK, universal school nutrition, universal after school, community schools. Those are what those plays are, is us trying to wrap around everybody 0 to 12. So that's stage 1. A little bit less your area, but it's about nurturing the human being before they even become students or workers. Stage 2 is 13 to 25, like I said. It's basically puberty through to prefrontal cortex stopping development. And during that period, that's more or less like late middle school, 8th grade through to like what we call like higher ed and a little bit beyond. During that period, we should have discovery and exploration. It should not be like you have to pick one box. It's a 4-year box that comes with this much debt and this much time commitment. There's this box, there's this box, there's this box. That period should be about discovery and exploration. Come in and out. Fuck around. Fuck up. That's great. You should do that. The period from 13 to 25 should be about that. Right now, we don't have enough grace in that part of, we haven't built as systems grace in that period. We create this expectation that unless you know exactly what your passion is in life and you're willing to put it on a 4-year time commitment and a 6-figure debt bet at 18 on what your passion in life will be for the next rest of your life, that somehow you're less than, somehow you're behind, you're not worthy of. And that's what's ridiculous. So we got to dismantle that and make that whole period much more porous. It should be much more about take a year off, go work, take a year off and go, explore these classes, that profession or that career. That's number 2. This is where community colleges are going to be very central, obviously, because you're the sort of connecting guts between the high school experience. That's why we're doing dual enrollment, and with the UC CSUs in the workforce. And that's why we're basically, that's why Stuart Knox says that he wants to collapse LWDA into the community college, basically wants to combine the kingdoms, basically. But that's what we got to do there. We got to make it much less siloed out. We got to make much more porous, much more interoperable, much more breathable, that aligns with the human life. Third stage in our human lives is basically 26 through retirement and death. And again, it's like, you could think about human lives in a number of ways, but here's just one way, especially from the career lens. 26 to retirement and death. What we have right now is a patchwork of adult learner pieces. We've never actually thought about a system. Everything that we've built is a follow-up to the master plan for higher education. Is like trying to fill in the gaps. And so we got to relook at all that and actually build a coherent system. And the defining feature there is navigation. Whereas in 1960, the idea was, let's stick you on the pathway to a gold watch at Boeing. That's not the case for any of us anymore. My friends at Harvard Law, like you could think about any number of labor market dynamism in any number of ways. We could think about AI and what's it going to do and whatever. But it is going to open up a new conversation, because let me tell you this. For the first time, at least in recent memory, everybody is going to get hit by this labor market dynamism that's coming at us. A Harvard Law grad who's graduating this month, going to a law firm, the first 3 years of their work at a law firm has already been eaten up by AI. Because what they do with the first 3 years is document review, discovery, drafting interrogatories, drafting, production requests, whatever. AI just does that now. So a Harvard Law grad's degree is already obsolete. Right now, we don't know it yet, but that's the truth of it. And so what I'm saying is what we have to do is actually say, that's great. Right now, where we talk about dislocation and getting laid off as like this big traumatic event, and it is traumatic because we have no supports, right? It's traumatic because we make it traumatic. We keep it traumatic. But we talk about it as like, oh my gosh, you lost your job. But if we build support systems and we actually build the services there, we don't have to say, oh, traumatic. We could actually be like, great news, you got laid off. It's an opportunity for you to explore a new area that you are passionate about and new human interests. And the reason why you don't need to be so anxious about it and think about it from a scarcity mindset is we have systems to support you. We have these doors for you. We have one simple door for you to walk through, and then we're going to make sure that you're taken to all the different other paths and all the different opportunities. It should be an empowering experience. We can make it an empowering experience. And so all that said, I know a long way to put it, but I think that the thing that we fundamentally need to shift is this conveyor belt structure to a much more human-centered structure that aligns with more or less those, like our systems align with the common sense of those 3 stages of life. Nurture at early years, provide a period of basically a trial period in human life, right? It's like, just fuck around a bit, 13 to 25, explore, try, it's okay to fail. And then 26 in retirement and beyond is don't worry about it if you get knocked out of the labor market every now and again, because that's normal and will empower you to actually navigate.
So when I hear you talk about this, I get excited because I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and so this impacts their future. And so what I hear is congruence, and there's the state system. I'm thinking about people who get paid, right? There's a lot of us who work, and by some shape, form, or fashion, we get paid by the state. But a lot of us get paid to maintain the status quo. But then you think about the training is not targeted at all of those people that are getting paid to maintain the status quo, because they got to change mindset. And so I'm just thinking about the chancellor's team. The chancellor, like, I feel like the community college system is like in the middle. You got the K-12 over here, like, and I work in K-12, and we're not having this conversation. We're not talking about changing. I mean, and I don't mean it to knock. I'm just saying it's a huge thing. And then you got the universities, and no one is required to cooperate with the community colleges. And so we're kind of in the middle. There's a lot of innovative things that are happening. And so we were joking about, I'm like, if the governor wrote a letter and said, hey, release these people right here from their day to day and let them focus on this problem full time and expand the chancellor's team, we can figure it out in the months. But I think the target has to be the people that get some kind of state money to live on. Hey, look, we're going in a different direction, but that conversation is not happening at that level. And so things just keep staying the same. And how do we address that? Like, there's a lot of people that are getting paid from the state saying, hey, we're going in a different direction, but we're not having the, hey, you got to change conversation with because that's the levers. It's the average working person that works for the state. And I'm saying community college employees, K-12 employees, university employees. Some of us are maintaining the status quo, and we're not changing. And so how do we shift some of the training there, because we're doing a lot of training on folks that don't deal with the lever situation.
So this is precisely why I usually start with the question, raise your hand if you came into this work because you want to entrench the status quo, et cetera. Because obviously no one ever raises their hand. And so here's my conception of a lot of the work, what I see as the higher ed ecosystem or education ecosystem, is human beings have sorted themselves into being either bullies or bureaucrats. And so let me explain what I mean by that. There's a lot of bullies, and oftentimes what happens, it's like, what's wild to me is like, if you're equity minded, you got out of college and you like got into a path, and some of us sorted into like, we're on the inside and we're working on like, X, Y, and Z at this college, or we're administrators, we're doing X, Y, or Z. And then there's some of us who are on the outside who are like advocates and who are pushing for change. What I find is that it's the same humans. You all came in desperately wanting to fix things, desperately wanting to solve problems, desperately wanting to heal pain. No one ever came into the work being like, I want to entrench the status quo. But you all come in desperate. The folks on the outside turn themselves into bullies oftentimes. They're so hurt that things aren't changing faster that they shout louder. They think, if only I shout louder, and maybe if I'm like meaner and I bring in more data and I shout more and I walk and knock on doors and all these things, maybe that'll work. And so they've gotten like a bullying attitude, even though they're good human beings. And then I find that a lot of the folks on the inside, because they're also, again, they're hurt too. They desperately came in to want to fix it and they're hurt and they can't, it won't change. And they're now the problem and they're the man. And it's like, what do I do? And everyone's shouting at you from the outside. And I bet you've seen this before. The person on the inside turtles up. As a defensive move, they grow a thick skin of no, of skepticism, of cynicism. They basically are just like, nothing's ever going to change. And so they turn to bureaucrats. And so what I see is a world of people who are desperate for the change, who came to the work for the change, but decades of rust has grown on them and hate, bullies and bureaucrats. And so in terms of how to instigate this conversation, that's the big question for me. That's what I'm trying to do with the next 33 months. That's what I'm trying to do with this, which is to say, if you were a 20-year-old intern on the master plan for higher education, today you would be 84 years old. I've looked for that intern. I've looked for anybody who worked on the master plan for higher education to be like, give me some insights. How do you actually instigate this conversation? The problem is that this conversation has never been had. The master plan for higher education, like I said, was developed by a relatively small group of people. It was like 100 people, UC professors and state board members who were just having, it wasn't that many people actually. How do you instigate a much bigger conversation when you have so many other people who have a valid voice in this conversation? I think that's part of what's been stuck. And I don't have a great answer for it. I don't have like a magic playbook of how do you deliver transformative change in 2024, when it hasn't happened in our entire living memories. I want to point that out too. In our entire living memories, we've lived in this policy construct that's been small ball, incremental. Let's do a pilot here. Let's do a good, bright spot there. So that's all to say, I don't know how to instigate the bigger conversation. That's what we're trying to do. And it's like this sort of policy vehicle that we're using for it is the master plan for career education. But the real conversation we're trying to instigate is this one.
Member Villavicencio next.
Thank you, Ben, for being here and really challenging us to be more innovative and creative and bringing this conversation really to a higher level. As we know, California leads, and wherever we go, the country tends to follow. And in a way, the world tends to follow. And I want to actually take this conversation a little broader because we're in the 21st century and we live in a globalized and interconnected world. We had a conversation last night and you mentioned like AI is the new gold rush too. And I think this is part and parcel of my question. We can definitely learn also a lot from the world. And I'm wondering if the governor's office has sort of engaged in looking at best practices of what other countries are doing, because we know that there's the European model that has been aligned with more apprenticeships and industry. And obviously we're more of a liberal market model that allows for more flexibility. And there's some advantages and disadvantages to that. But with that said, we know that our workers are going to compete globally. And there's domestic needs in our domestic workforce that needs to be filled in. And we also have an international workforce that we need to develop to remain competitive, to maintain sort of the US edge in innovation and maintaining that standing, right, in the global stage. And so I don't know if this is necessarily, well, that was one of my questions was, have you explored again, perhaps different models and what we can possibly do to bring that here to California? And number two, how do we remain competitive? Of course, we're going to compete with the Chinese. We're going to compete with the Europeans whose students, unlike our students, are very proficient in multiple languages and whatnot. Now, obviously, we lead in technology and AI is going to change the playing field there. But I think we need to have these broader conversations, right? And in a way, I'm trying to elevate what you've mentioned to us and how we can think in a much more creative way. So
yes,
I'd bring that to bear for my question. Thank
so
you.
I want to, so yes, we think about this a lot. I want to offer two models that we're looking at, and I want to offer though like 3 layers to think about. So like at the top layer that we look at is oftentimes Singapore, because what Singapore does a good job of is helping to mediate labor supply and labor demand. They have a good they maintain a good conversation between employers, education systems, and the community at large. We need to be doing that as well. And then we also need to be doing it at the regional level. So one thing that we want to steal from Singapore is how they structure the conversation. The next layer down is what happens within the conversation, which is pathing and careers. And so with that, we want to steal from the European model. We want to take from Germany and Switzerland and other places that have gotten much better at pathing than we have gotten. And so to me, that next layer down and places to learn from is like Germany and Switzerland. And then the bottom layer though, and then probably also the very top layer is California unique in my mind, right? It's like what I tell the governor is we need to operationalize the Singapore, Swiss, and German models for California. And so the way that this impacts and the way that the values that are embedded need to be Californian. Because for example, the Singaporean model was built on like anti-labor like notions that can't be California either. And then, also a little bit of factory model. Lee Kuan Yew was like very much like, widgets. I want to optimize. I want the Singaporeans to be the best widget. I should probably, but it's but it was a very factory model as well. So we could do better on both the sides of the values there. I also want to point out the sort of long-term vision of what we want to do with this, which is to say, you're exactly right too, that this is part of a broader conversation. Let me map out at least the next 5 years, at least the next 6 years in my mind. So 2024, instigate this conversation around the master plan for higher education, career education. Do this, blah, 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 blah. 2025 and 2026, fight for it. Land it, legislature, as much as we can, the budget and legislation. And then we drive implementation from 2027 and 2028 and show the world, America, how California is rethinking education writ large. That tees up for 2028. And what I'm hoping for, and I don't want to get too political, but in 2016, the Democratic primaries were all about Medicare for all. Every Democrat had to have a Medicare for all plan. Why? Because Bernie had one. In 2028, if we can show that California has a vision that is unique, that is big, and that is truly forward thinking, we have a platform to communicate to the world. Actually, we have a new model for doing this, everybody. And I say the world, it's not an accident either, because sure, it's America, but actually this conversation is needed across the world. If you look at, speaking of global statistics, if you look at the number of young people in China who are underemployed and who are experiencing mental health issues, it's across the board. The old model is broken and we have to redo it. We have to re-architect it.
Member Rawlings and Member Haynes.
So you've answered part of what I had in mind with Member Vincentio's question there. It's kind of like, how do we get these first steps, right? So, having a new committee of 10, maybe not something that we're ready to have a national conversation about, but maybe in 2028 we might. So it's about how do we address the core challenges with the master plan for higher education, right? And you can try and do it in a transformative way, but we've got to kind of set the table first. And so my thoughts were that at the very beginning, it comes with empowering people to have a conversation first, so that those folks who, as you've asked, they don't want the status quo, they recognize the challenges, the failings of the status quo, they are ready to embrace the change, but they're not comfortable having a conversation about what that change includes, because that also is a risk and a challenge for them, right? And so it's having these conversations with partners, whether it be labor groups, whether it be education coalitions, whether it be, thought leaders, having a conversation first, getting these ideas at a level of comfort where we could really talk about, like, how do we actually implement this change, right? And so my question is, how do we begin that conversation, that initial, hey, here's the Singapore model, here's the European model, here's what we can do, right? Now, how do we do it really that's where we've got those 100 different options, right? But how do we have that initial conversation and kind of give people a safer space to explore?
Yeah, so I'll always reiterate the sort of like these questions with, I don't know. Like, I don't know how you actually get everybody to, like, yeah, like, I mean, these are great points, right? Like, systemically, we're talking about having to change the hearts and minds of hundreds of thousands of people and how they've been doing business. Like, right? And like, I even think about like Committee of 10, and it's like, it's not like no one's ever had an inclusive process for any of this stuff. Committee of 10 was 10 Mabels and Corneliuses just deciding what was good for the rest of us. And so like all that saying is like, I don't actually know. And that's why I'm coming at it with this attitude, this way of like coming at it, just being like, look, it's just as much on you to get this fixed as it's on me. Like I'm gonna be around and I'm gonna try to drive it. But like this is like a leaderless movement here, because at the end of the day, it has to be all of us. But having said that, it's a core, like this implementation question is really core in my mind. And so I want to offer you all insight, or so I'll take a step back and say, there's a lot of work that we're asking you all to do in the Chancellor's office to do. And I'll just say that you all are the partners that give me the most hope, because most problem solve, like easiest to work with, best to work with, least turfy. And so as I'm asking people to do more work, here's the ways I'm asking them to do it. I have basically 2 lanes, and it's under the sort of banner of career education. One lane is under the Council for Career Education, and that's all about implementation. And then the other is the Master Plan for Career Education. And I want to paint the picture of why they're both running concurrently. On the Council for Career Education, it is the table that I've set, where it's basically sort of the top layer of each of our systems. So it's Sonia and Michael Drake and Millie and Stuart Knox and Dee Dee and Tony Thurmond and Linda and others. But I know that those meetings don't matter because we're all just we're the talking heads, right? We need to get the actual doers, the next layers. We got to get lower, we got to get as low down as possible. And so we built a layer underneath the next layer down, which is basically the doers like Tony and others who are in our central offices, helping to just make sure like, okay, we don't need new legislation. Let's just make sure that we're doing better on X, Y, and Z. Let's just drive on it. Let's build that connective tissue, that muscle. And I want you to build that muscle, frankly, in an environment where the governor and I can be the heavy, and I can be like, you better be fucking listening to the community colleges on this. Like, I mean, just to be like that is the, like, let me create a nice play space for that. And then we have Boston Consulting Group making sure that everyone's driving as much as possible. So that's one lane. It's about implementation. And I know that it's still pretty like high up there. It's still like in the sort of central offices of our systems, but we got to start there to keep pollinating and driving the consensus and the socialization down. So that's one layer. And then concurrently is the Master Plan for Career Education, which I said, we're talking about it. We'll put it out by the end of this year, like a visionary document and a playbook, and then fight for it for the last 2 years. The reason why they're running concurrently is they need to inform each other. They need to weave in and out. We're going to take things that we're going to take things that we need to land in the master plan and implement them on ahead of time. So like start a runway now of implementing on a proof point a year before we need to prove out the point, right? So it's like, how do we actually build the muscle? How do we start building the case for this on both ends, both the implementation side and the development side? And how do you weave them together in a way that makes sure that what you come out with at the very end is both visionary and durable, but also operable and has sufficient buy-in from the doers across the board that it actually keeps moving and it doesn't, get skunked 33 months from now.
So one of the things that I hear is that we have a unique opportunity now with the master plan for adult education and career education. And our board here being in a position, I think, and in a mindset of innovating and being open to these things, some of that conversation is going to start with us. And we need to communicate out, and we need to really be engaged in this work and in building that new master plan so we can learn some lessons from it and weave it in, as you say.
That's right.
It's wonderful.
Ben and Bill, you couldn't have set this up more perfectly for our next conversation, which is going to be about the adult low-wage learner and the work that we're doing. And when you mentioned muscle, I thought we do have pockets of innovation, and we're building on those pockets of innovation, especially for credit for prior learning and rethinking how we do apprenticeship. That sense of urgency, because the 6.8 billion people can't wait for us to get it perfect.
Yep.
Can't wait for 116 colleges to all do the same thing at the same time. And I think that our focus on our ability to build the muscle and our demonstration projects only allows us then to lift that up. So there really is equity across all of our colleges, regardless of where they started. We will have models in place that are designed for the people that you're talking about, especially for those low-income workers. And I just really appreciate the energy that you bring to the conversation. And it really aligns with what our mission is, right? Our mission is to uplift the people that we serve in every community across California. So thank you
Yeah,
for
no, and honestly,
highlighting that.
in what you're saying too, I think actually, I was thinking like Nan and Sonia, you're like examples of what you just talked about, right? Which is to say that like, I find that people have been stuck. They've been like overthinking. They've been like waiting for the perfect, they're only perfect being maybe the good. Like what I say sometimes is like the feeling of California policy is like, we're all like hungry and we want to go to dinner. And we're all like in the car. And it feels like I'm the driver of this car. And I'm just like, okay, everybody, where are we going to drive? And then I've got 10 people and they want to go to 10 different restaurants. And they're just like fighting and fighting and fighting. I'm like, where are we going to drive? Where are we going to drive? And everyone's getting hangrier and hangrier, right? And it's just like, come on, let's just go somewhere. My point being that your attitude around sort of like, we can't let these, students can't wait for us to get it perfect. And that's the attitude. That's the sort of problem solving, practical attitude that we need. And the reason why I bring up Sonia and you together is what that often led to was pockets of innovation, was quote unquote bright spots. And obviously Kern was a bright spot. And we'd heard about Kern over and over for a while, throughout the leadership that you all were driving. But the point I want to really emphasize here is I'm sick and tired of bright spots. I love a good bright spot as much as anybody else does, but we've been talking about bright spots for so long. When are we going to systematize the bright spots? When are we going to incentivize the bright spots? When are we going to make the bright spots the norm? And we got to get to that next step. And I know that that's why it's frankly, this is the right leadership. And that's why we have been, building the right leadership over the years, is because it is like, we need people who are solutions oriented, who have built bright spots, but we all need to take the more courageous steps of structuralizing in the bright spots and making it the norm and not the outlier.
It's a model for systemic change, right?
That's right.
That's what we're talking about,
That's
to
right.
make it equitable for every Californian.
Ben, we obviously have a lot of strong feelings about this. I'm just letting you know we have 4 more people with questions and basically no time to do it. So we're going to please be mindful of that as you engage Ben in discussion. We're going to go with Member Haynes, Member Medina, then Member Perry.
Thank you. Then I want to take you back to something you said, and you used some expressions, and it was, we need to be in a place where when somebody gets dislocated from a job, they say, great, I now have an opportunity to rethink what it is I want to do. I was one of those people 35 years ago in an industry that transformed nationally, which was the airline industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I no longer really had a job I could sort of figure out, and that gave me an opportunity to go back to school. But that was in the private sector. And I do think we are now in a time where dislocation is, and the private sector has made some of those transitions in a way that we can see. Our educational systems, not just in California, but across the nation, has been working on processes that are more than 150 years old. And that's the work that we all have to do together, because we need to be partners in all of this. And so, and there is this fear that you're supposed to be in a job for 20 years, you're supposed to be in a job for 30 years, and you're supposed to get the gold watch. In the private sector, that's long gone, long gone. And so where I think we really need to be is where our Californians are, and they're trying to make do on 2, 3, 4 jobs. And that is our customer base, but only if we're able to transform our educational and training institutions that match their particular needs. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
I think we have to, I mean, one of the ways I think about all of this work is we need to recenter who we have in mind, right? When I was saying around the master plan for higher education and the architects there, what they had in mind, who they were solving for was who they were, when it boiled down to it, what they were really solving for is the most highest achieving or whatever they wanted to call it high school student. Like that was really, and it was about like, how do you ration the resources and all that jazz. We know the stories. And so to me, it's like, that's who they had in mind. And actually, it's remarkable how much of that persists even now. All morning before this, I've been dealing with, Israel, Gaza protests issues on our campuses. Remarkably, year 116 don't have many of the issues. It happens to be a very small set of very selective universities. Everybody in higher education wants me to worry about and spend all my time right now on higher education and higher education policy on a conflict occurring around the world. Why? It's because that's where the elite part of our system is a little on fire. But your system, like the 2.1, like most of our students aren't actually seeing anything. And so my point being that like who we even have in mind as who we're solving for is the problem. We're not solving for even the 18-year-old, I think, anymore. We shouldn't be. We should be solving for the 45-year-old. We should be thinking to ourselves, that's why I start with the people like you who keep me up at night. It's the 14-year-old who already feels behind. The fuck? Like, why did we do that to you? And so to me, it's like, how do we actually look at your experience right now as a 14-year-old? And how do we embrace the sort of uncertainty of what it feels like to be, puberty and all these things? And like, how do we meet you where you are as opposed to impress upon you a different idea of what you need to be? And then likewise with adult learners and the 45-year-old, we need to think about what is the median experience. And one way I think about it is bottom and middle. You want to, it's from very philosophical views, but it's like, you want to hit the median person and whenever you like thinking about population of people, you want to hit the median, you want to hit the worst off. And you want to keep those in mind. So it's like, in my mind, it's like the 45-year-old, what we need to do is recenter from the 18-year-old excelling, student who goes to UC to the 45-year-old, and then think about 45-year-old median worker and the 45-year-old bottom worker and try to think about systems that serve both. And then I'll just say lastly, it's gonna, there's obviously a lot here that has to do with access and affordability because the big sort of, the big thing in California is affordability and the total cost of just living and breathing in California. So like that is the big question in my mind for both young people and for adult learners is how do you actually build a system that meets them?
So we have 6 minutes left for you, and we've already quadrupled the time that we wanted to spend with Ben. So thank you very much for staying with us. I'm going to try to implement a unique model here where member Medina, member Perry, and member Chang are going to ask their questions, and then perhaps you can synthesize all of that and try to tell us what you think.
That's a fun challenge.
From all of that.
Innovative.
So please.
I love that. That is such a fun challenge.
Thank you. And I don't mean to sound redundant, but I'll keep it brief. So you said some very striking words earlier, which was we have 1,000 doors for adult learners, but we've never built a system for adult learners. People often ask me, what do you do on the Board of Governors? My short response is I work on I work alongside my colleagues on making California a better place through community college education. So with that being said, I'm going to segue to the next point. One of my big whys, as many of you already know, is advocating for adult learners. So I'm really excited that we're talking about this. It's like music to my ears. So even though there's many important elements that have been implemented, credit for prior learning, something we're talking about, if you were to sit here on the Board of Governors, from what angle, what policies would you work on transforming, obviously a more transformative change, number one? I feel there's still big work in progress for all 116 community colleges, adding more adult cohorts, small learning communities over on campus is very important. Obviously having one-stop shops, we're still far away from that happening. So what's your thoughts? I don't know if you want to, the next questions, if you're going to match what they are.
This is more, thank you, Ben. I like the framing. You basically talked about nurture, explore, and empower as the 3 stages. And it made me think that as a system, we're starting to talk about our students in terms of addressing them holistically, but I think we need to insert humanity because holistic does not mean human. It means a broader view, and human is the core of who our students are. And I think we're a little bit guilty of slotting our students. It's like that we look at them as a problem. You don't have a career right now. This is kind of a problem I need to challenge. Instead of that, it should be, I think of it all the time when I work with foster youth. It's like, you look at a foster youth like, oh my God, your life, your trajectory before has been up and down and uneven and sideways. But when you look at a foster youth, instead of looking at that, it should be, oh my God, you've been through so much. What extraordinary resilience you must have. What path can I help you chart to realize your humanity and your potential? And I think we need to reframe the way we look at our students a little bit in that way. So we're not guilty of slotting, and we're looking at the human beings that you talked about. So we're not solving the problem. We're creating better humans, I think is what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Member Chang.
So as a student and someone in the discovery and exploration part of my life, I wanted to thank you for bringing your passion and dedication to higher education. In addition, share some of my insight from someone who's recently, or I guess a few years ago, graduated from high school and was taught that there was really one way to get through and be successful. It was high school, get good grades, get a good SAT score, go to a great university, do a job for the rest of your life. And there wasn't a lot of opportunity to like figure out what you wanted to do in life. And so a lot of times through my path through higher education, I felt a little less than my peers who were at Ivy Leagues or at top 10 universities all across the country. But I like what I'm hearing from you is that I'm in that 12 to 25-year-old era of just discovery and exploration, but that wasn't what I was taught. I was taught this one path and you have to get on it and you have to like be successful and graduate and know what you want to do. But for the longest time, I didn't. And I still am juggling. I'm interested in all these things. So how do you change the mindset of the people who have been taught from like even as young as before 12 that there is only one way to do this and be successful in life?
Yeah, so I could do this. So, I mean, to me, the through line is obvious, which is that we need to bring, for over the decades, what's happened is our systems have drifted further and further away from reality, lived reality. And so they're like this far apart now. The upshot of it between all three of these questions is we got to bring them back together, right? And so Paul, you talk about what we can do in terms of, you know, sort of what you all could be doing. What are some policy levers? I mean, you're pulling all the policy levers that are right, but you mentioned one that's especially a good example, which is credit for prior learning, right? To me, credit for prior learning is about aligning our systems to real life. It's about saying, hey, there's, you know, for anything, there's basically like the actual experience, the labor market value, and then what the system recognizes. And what credit for prior learning is, you had the lived experience, you have the labor market value, but our systems have not actually caught up to recognizing and crediting that labor market value yet. That's on us. That's our fault. We're sorry. Let us do it as fast as we can. Like, that's the point. But to me, it's about aligning our systems to real life, because we know in real life, having been served in the military and learned X, Y, and Z skills and gotten years of that experience means that you actually have learned quite a bit and you have quite a bit of labor market value, and we need to capture that. And that's about aligning systems to real life, which very much has to do, Jennifer, to the human as well, because we have to recognize the fact that in real life, we start with our human needs. We start with the fact that, you know, you can't learn if you're hungry and all these different things. I actually find that way too often we get into this trap between humans and systems, whereby in education, we get used to celebrating the humans. You celebrate stories like mine. Drop out to Harvard Law, how cool. But who cares? Like, or like the teacher who like saw the student who was struggling and like dirty clothes, and so took the kid's laundry home and did it and then brought it back. Oh, what a beautiful story. Let's give him an award. These are all beautiful, heroic stories, but they're stories that exist only because our systems are so awful. There shouldn't have to be a heroic teacher who is like, oh, let me take your clothes back at home to my own personal home and then do your laundry for you. Why don't we have a community school that meets that need? Like, that's what we need to be solving for. So we need to do a better job of, yes, celebrating the humanity and the joy of every human interaction, but actually systematizing humanity better. making it so that our systems default into human actions as opposed to inhuman actions that individual humans have to come in and fix up later on. Which finally gets to my point, Casey, around you, and happy birthday. It's a great example of this, which is that there's a relationship between our systems, our structures, and our culture. They're all integrated. Because people ask me, how do you have this? But Ben, what you're raising is a question about it's not even clear what question you're raising here. It's about human nature. It's philosophical. It's some sort of a critique on, our social systems and market-based, whatever. It's something. And I hear it and I get it. That's why I'm saying I don't know how to move forward with this conversation, but I need partners. We need to instigate it. Because at the end of the day, there's not a box I could check to say, okay, there's not a bill I could pass that instigates a cultural change conversation. But my theory is that, and I think it's not just my theory, I think it's almost certainly true, which is that there is a clear connection between structures and culture. I kind of think about it as one echoes off the other. So it's our culture and our human interactions echo off our systems and our structures. And right now it's echoing off really crumbling and rusted out systems. And so as a result, our culture thinks of our systems as adversarial to them, as closed off to them, as old and bureaucratic and inhumane. And so what I'm saying is if we could build systems that are defaulting better to humanity, I think the echo that we get back in our culture is going to be better than the one that we have now.
Thank you very much, Ben. I would argue that we're not just entrenching status quo with our inaction, we are extending our obsolescence. And we have to understand that we are now beyond the inflection point, but still in a point of interruption where we can stop this cycle of the oppressed becoming the oppressor. So thank you very much for that call to action.